Hey, it's Lou Diamond Phillips, LDP in the house, and you are watching Taboo's Comics and Kicks. Ritchie! You have my permission to say it.
Let's go straight into it, Lou. Nearly 40 years later, we're celebrating the beautiful memory, the childhood, the nostalgia of La Bamba.
Mm-hmm.
And I say childhood because, in a sense, Ritchie Valens passed away at a very young age.
Yeah,
The
17 years old.
Teenage kid.
Yeah.
People, they probably to this day, they still call you Ritchie.
Yeah. No, it's been 40 years of people going,
Right.
Ritchie!
Yeah.
Yeah, from across the street, hotel lobbies, airports. Yeah.
But it's just a testament to the success of the film, man. Let's take a journey, dive into this amazing experience. You coming from, this is your first introducing Lou Diamond Phillips.
Yeah, that was a big deal.
Walk us through that.
I had gone to the University of Texas at Arlington. I got my degree in theater. I intended to do this always. This wasn't an accident, you know. I trained. I trained with a guy named Adam Rourke at a place called the Film Actors Lab, which taught film technique. It took what you knew from theater and from acting class, and it applied it to specifically working in film. So I was a professional even then. I was teaching class. I had gotten my first professional gig, a comedy group called the 0 Hour. We used to do like really raunchy SNL comedy at midnights, skits, but in a punk club called Zeros in Fort Worth.
Wow, a punk club.
If you werenn't funny, man, they threw things at you. You know what I'm saying? So you got really fast. You know?
You got timing.
Yeah, exactly. I was paying my bills being an actor. I was really, really proud. And then, you know, I get a call one day from my agent's assistant, and the funny thing is she gets it entirely wrong, bro. She says, "Yeah, you got an audition for a musical about Frankie Valli," and I was like, "Oh, okay, the Four Seasons, Frankie Valli. That's weird, man. Okay, whatever. You know, I auditioned for everything back then, and so I'm thinking, Sherry, all right, I can do that.
Falsetto.
Yeah, I'm good. You know, but I go to the audition, and it's not a musical; it's a movie. And I get the sides, you know, the scenes that you're supposed to audition with. They don't give them to you beforehand. You get them right then and there. And that's why it used to be called a cold read. You know, that's what we used to have to do. And I'm reading these sides, and I'm like, oh my God, this is like a freaking movie, and it's Ritchie Valens, and it's his life story. And I'm like, I'm blown away. I'm literally going, this right here in my hand, this is the big break that everybody talks about. Yeah, you know, and they read me for both. You know, they read me for both Bob and Ritchie. Junie Lowry, the casting director, who also put me in Longmire, you know, where I played Henry Standing Bear in Northern Cheyenne. She, at the end of the day, she gives me the script and she goes, "I'm not supposed to do this, but here, take this script, and we're probably going to be in touch," you know. And I think, okay, that's great, you know, we'll see. And sure enough, you know, a couple of weeks later, you know, I get a call from Rhodey Kent, who was the local casting director in Dallas. Cast the Dallas series, put me in that as well. So the thing is, I had landed a TV movie with, you know, Dabney Coleman. You remember Dabney Coleman from 9 to 5? And, you know, I mean, we actually ended up becoming very, very good friends because he grew up in Corpus as well. So I had a choice. It's like I landed this TV movie that would pay my rent for like 3 months, or I could roll the dice and get flown to LA and audition and maybe not get it, you know? But you got to go for the, you know, the big one, right? You got to go for the big one.
Did you know who Ritchie Valens was back then?
I knew the song, you know? But I think like everybody, and this was, you know, the wonderful thing about it, brother, is that in being able to play Ritchie, it's not like playing, you know, Elvis or Buddy Holly even, you know, because those guys were so recognizable and so iconic. And, you know, nobody really knew who Ritchie was, man. I didn't know he was 17 years old. I didn't know his career was only 8 months long. He had 3 top 40 hits in 8 months, you know, starting with, you know, Come On, Let's Go, and then Odonna and La Bamba, you know? And so getting to do the research on him, man, was just mind-blowing, you know, really eye-opening. And the fact that Luis, you know, told it through the lens of the family. That, you know, it's funny, I just had a conversation with somebody about how a lot of the musical biopics now, they're just playing the hits, man. They're just, you know, just playing the hits. They're not really getting into what created them, what really drove them to be artists. And Luis did that, you know. The beauty of it is that this documentary, American Pachuco, The Legend of Luis Valdez, you see some of my original auditions. You see the behind the scenes footage,
awesome.
you know, of
Yeah.
me hanging out with the family and stuff, and that whole process, you know, and so the fact that you know I got the role, and it's so funny. My mentor Adam Rourke, he said, Lou, there's not a snowball's chance in hell you're going to get this role, right? He goes, but you go out there, you kick their ass, and maybe you get to play the drummer.
Yeah.
Right? So,
Drummer.
yeah, I said, cool.
Okay,
Yeah,
sure.
okay. That makes a lot of sense, because why would anybody believe I was going to get the lead of the movie, you know?
Yeah.
So sure enough, you know, I go to, you know, LA, and for about a week I'm reading Bob with all the Ritchies. And this is funny too, because it's in the documentary. John Stamos' picture was already up on the wall.
As Ritchie Valens?
I thought they were going to I thought they'd cast
Uncle
John.
Jesse?
Right? And,
Wow.
Yeah, and so I think, okay, well, you know, my shot is Bob.
Yeah.
You know, but then after a couple of days, Louis says, Lou, tomorrow you're going to read for Ritchie. And I'm like, oh, did negotiations break down or something?
Right.
You know, I don't know. But yeah, and then, you know, ended up doing the screen test, and you know, like the rest is history. I mean, the funny thing is I used to smoke back in the day. I don't anymore. I have an occasional wonderful cigar.
Celebratory.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm going to probably have one this afternoon. But take a little walk down memory lane up in, you know, Hollywood. But so I'm standing outside the soundstage, and everybody, Esai, Daniel Von Zernick, Rosanna de Soto, Elizabeth Pena, they're all screen testing that day too, but they don't have any competition. But there's this guy that I've never seen before, you know, from a soap or something. He's coming in, and so now all of a sudden I still have competition. So I'm outside, you know, I'm having a smoke, and this red Thunderbird convertible pulls into a, you know, reserved spot right there by the soundstage, and you know, this brother gets out with you know, his leather vest and his, like, you know, white tank top, wraparound Balarama shades, you know, and he gets out of the car. And I went, oh my God, oh, that's the real Bob Morales. That's the cat right there, you know?
Yep.
And Bob says it later, man. He says the second he saw me, he knew it was me.
Wow.
He said, I knew you were going to get it.
Right.
I knew you were going to get it.
So it was the real Bob.
The real Bob.
Right.
You know? And so I get the gig. And like I said, it's in the film too. It's fun. But I get the gig. They literally send me home on Friday because I'd only packed for, like, you know, 4 or 5 days, right? Now I got to come pack for like 3 months, you know, to come and make the movie. And back at the Film Actors Lab, they throw me a big party. Adam's like, hey, kid, you did it, you know? And I fly back to LA on Sunday. I have 1 week of rehearsal, 1 week. I don't play the guitar. I wasn't as much of a singer back then. And 16 songs I had to learn. I mean, the preparation was really intense. But I landed at LAX. I remember this like it's yesterday. I'm coming down the escalator. You know, I'm going to catch a cab, I guess, to wherever I'm staying. And the bottom of the stairs is Bob Morales. And he came to pick me up at the airport.
That's amazing.
And he took me to the house that Ritchie bought his mom in Pacoima.
Right.
What?
And I stayed there that night. I met his mom. I met Connie. I met Irma. Little Mario, who's a musician now up in Santa Cruz, you know. And so automatically I was taken into the family, you know what I'm saying? And that just became my introduction into being Ritchie.
You were not only playing Ritchie, you were playing somebody's son, somebody's brother, someone who passed away at 17 years old.
Yeah.
How much time did you spend trying to understand who Ritchie was when the cameras weren't rolling inside of the movie?
It was constant. You know, I mean, Luis literally at one point, you know, said to me, he goes, just like in the movie, he goes, if I see you without your Walkman, you know, that's a tape recorder for you kids back in the day.
Yeah, truth.
You know, so he wanted me to have the Walkman and a guitar close by at all times to constantly be learning those songs. And Jim Fox was the guitar instructor, and he was always on call. So, but even when we were filming, bro, there was no downtime. I was not hanging out in the trailer. The family was always there, and so they were my greatest asset. You know, anytime I had a scene coming up, I said, "How do you think Ritchie would think about this?" Or, you know, how would he have done this? And, you know, I mean, it just led to little touches. You know, I mean, like, you know, when he's writing, you know, O'Donna in the basement, and he's got the cigarette in the frets. You know, that was something Ritchie used to do.
Right.
You know, all these little touches that weren't in the script that the family would hit me to. You know, and you know, I remember one of the first scenes we did in the first week was the audition for the Silhouettes.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and one of Ritchie's aunts was on set that day. And I thank God she was, because I mean, she turned to Luis Valdez and Taylor Hackford, the producer. And after the first take, she went, "That's Ritchie.
Yeah.
That's Ritchie." So I was getting the endorsement from the family, the validation from the family constantly. And you know, I was always, and as I said, they were my biggest asset. But you know, it's also the biggest pressure, because they're the ones they're watching, and this isn't just a movie for them, man. It's their life.
Exactly.
You know. But yeah, I mean, that's the thing is that. This was not only introducing Lou Diamond Phillips, it was basically introducing Ritchie Valens to a much wider audience.
Correct.
Who didn't know he was Chicano, didn't know he was a teenager, didn't know all of this stuff, you know? One of my favorite memories is when the movie opened in '87, we had a Ritchie Valens Day at the $1 Million Theater downtown, right?
Yeah.
And at the
downtown, dude.
Yeah, Mayor Tom Bradley was the mayor at the time. And, you know, the whole family was there. People didn't know that Connie, who's in the movie, Connie, she had the
real Connie was in the movie.
The real Connie, yeah.
And
so she's the blonde-haired woman in the scene when Ritchie comes home from New York and they're throwing him a party. Yeah, she's sitting on the couch.
Okay,
everybody's
that's
in the house.
Yes,
together.
everybody's in the house. And his sister Irma, his older sister Connie, they're all in the movie as
now
well.
I gotta go watch.
Yeah, no, yeah. Well, if you want, when you watch American Pachuco, you'll be able to pick them out.
Okay.
You know, because they show a lot of the behind the scenes stuff. So at this Ritchie Valens Day, Mayor Tom Bradley's there, and Connie Senior, she had cancer. She had you know a fatal illness. She was not going to recover. She held on long enough to see the movie. She passed shortly after, like in '88. You know, and but she was just, you know, there was no way in the world she was not going to see you know, Ritchie get his due. And at this event, I'm standing next to her. She's in a wheelchair by this point. And I feel somebody grab my hand, and I look down, and you know, the Tom Bradley speaking, but Connie's looking up at me, and she said to me, "You gave me my son back." And it was just like
powerful.
Oh, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, just, you know.
I would have cried.
Yeah.
Bro, that's like
That's powerful.
You know, Mayor Bradley thought I was crying over his words, but no, I was crying over that
like
moment that Connie was so
Although very touching, sir.
so kind
right.
to me to you know to give me that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Amazing.
And being so young, but also like young as far as your acting career.
Yeah.
This is like a major film. Did you feel who took you under their wing as like a mentor?
Danny Valdez, you know, to a huge extent. You know, I mean, obviously Luis, you know, Taylor, but they were the real authority figures.
Okay.
You know, I mean, it scared the shit out of me. You know, I mean, literally. The third day of filming, I'm doing. You know, I like I said, I had to learn all of the fingering for the guitars and lip sync because they'd already recorded the soundtrack. I'm pretty sure that's how Taylor Hackford, because he had done other music films and he directed Ray. You know. I'm sure that's how we raised the financing was based on the soundtrack. Los Lobos, you know, had already recorded everything. So on the third day, I'm doing that little backyard scene. This old band, he played, you know, but nobody told me I was going to be on a freaking swing. And so I'm on a swing, and it's going badly, man. It's going badly. I can't freaking concentrate, and I got the little kids in front of me, and it's hot, man. It's like June, you know, in LA in the Valley, and after like 3 takes, you know, Taylor walks up to me and says, "Hey, kid, you knocked this out of the park, or we're sending you back to Texas."
Pressure.
Wow.
And so
Pressure.
I am afraid every single day of that shoot, man. People go, "Oh, did you love it? Was it great?" And I said, "No, man, I was scared shitless."
Of course.
You know? And I would go home every night and run the stuff. It's, you know, I wasn't hanging out living the Hollywood life. I was going home and studying every night, you know, for the work the next day. And you know, but Danny Valdez was, you know, he was like my tío. He plays my uncle in the movie.
Yeah.
You know? And he was always there. He was always backing it up. Here's a funny story in that The movie opens with Esai coming in, right, on the motorcycle, on the Indian motorcycle.
Passes the snake, right?
Right, all of that.
Yeah.
They filmed the real Bob doing that exact same path because the movie was originally told through Bob's eyes. And that's why he brings us into the movie. That was the original opening of the film.
Special.
They put in the flashback stuff with the planes later in the edit. They moved it around. But it was... The movie was going to end with the real Bob doing the same trip, right? Then with Bruce Springsteen's La Bamba being played over the last credits. About 2 weeks into the filming, it was Danny that came up to me and said, I've been watching the dailies, man. I'm like, yeah? He goes, yeah, it's Ritchie's movie again. It's Ritchie's movie now.
Yeah.
You know? And the night before it opened, I was having beers with Danny, and the big premiere was happening the next day at the Chinese theater. Huge deal. And Danny says to me, he goes, hey, kid, we're going to hand you the keys to the candy store. Don't rot your teeth.
Wow.
You know? And I remember that. That's like, all right.
I love that metaphor, dude.
Stay grounded,
Yeah,
man.
of course.
Stay grounded, your whole life.
Speaking about Bob and Esai Morales' portrayal of Bob, I mean, talk about antagonist, brother, freaking, ultimate dick to Rossi.
He was an asshole.
He was an asshole, but still, like, he didn't shy away from it, but yet he was really into Steve, Ritchie's dad, who was his stepdad, and like there was this tug and pull of like, is he a good guy?
Yeah.
He's trying to be an older brother, trying to teach lessons, but in his own way. Like, hey, you ever gotten laid? What is all that stuff?
No, it's funny. The real Bob Morales, everybody says, "Oh God, you were so honest. You were so brave to let him show all that." And Bob, I was worse. Bob said it, a bunch. He said he was worse. Now the funny thing is I don't know if I was getting all method or whatever, but dude, he was really competitive. He would say things to me, like before taking, "I'm going to steal this scene from you." Yeah. I'm like,
all right,
come on, bro, whatever, man. Yeah,
let's go.
Bring it.
Yeah.
All good. But I think he was trying to create that dynamic. Yeah. It's like, let's just act. How about we act?
How about we just go?
Yeah.
I'm the older brother. Right. Yeah, right. No, Bob was. I mean, speaking to Esai recently, Bob, man, like he had layers, dude, and like it ain't, something like, what do you say? You ain't my first, and you ain't my last. Like that was a powerful scene. Like, dude, you just shitted on your girl that you brought from fucking Northern Cali when you guys were, like, I love that you guys dove into the farm workers.
Yes,
and
huge.
Ritchie's. Participation and contribution to that. Like, was that something that was embedded in the script? Like, yo, we're going to showcase that?
No, 100%, bro. I got, and I don't mean to keep, going back to American Pachuco, but that tells a story that it'll bring tears to your eyes, because Luis Valdez was a farm worker kid, and he created the Teatro Campesino, during the grape strikes in the late 60s, early 70s. And he was telling this story, man. He was telling this story. So it's one of the reasons to me why La Bamba is evergreen. It's perennial. This new movie, American Pachuco, gives you insight into the making of that and into Luis's mission to bring not just Ritchie's story, but the story of the Chicanos, the story of the farm workers as people who are here, have belonged here. I mean, they say it in that film. They go, "Hey, man, we didn't jump the border jumped us." We were here first. Yeah, of course. And today, those two films, Stand and Delivers too. Those films are as relevant as ever because, we are in a time where they're trying to further marginalize already marginalized communities, man. They're trying to push them to the side. They're trying to roll back rights. They're literally saying to people's faces, "You don't belong here." And when you look at La Bamba, man, this was a young man who dreamed the American dream, and his way into that was rock and roll. Which transcends boundaries, it transcends culture, it transcends language, all of that. That music, as you well know, my brother,
yes, sir.
Touches people in ways that, politics or diplomacy or even literature will ever do. Music goes straight to the heart.
Well, that's kind of what really reeled me in about the movie. Like, first, I mean, what's the mom's name?
Connie.
Connie, every time she said "mijo," like that always reminded me of my mom.
Yeah.
So I was already drawn in because of that parallel world of growing up indigenous man, Chicano, Mexican American from East LA, having my mom in my life, single mom. My grandmother was an integral part, but something about you taking on that challenge. And there was one scene in particular where all that connection with his mom really resonated with me. But when you guys went to Mexico for the first time and you got to meet Tata, the Yaqui shaman, freaking grandfather. And it just reconnecting with your roots because the scene, going back to the scene of you performing with the band and you're just playing. And like, when is Ritchie gonna sing? She's like, you don't know who you're messing with. My grandfather was a 100% Yaqui Indian. Like that was powerful. Because it was about her acknowledging her indigenous ancestry. But then you, Ritchie, going with Bob to visit Tata and really connect on a spiritual frequency when you get the
rattlesnake.
The rattlesnake medallion, but also learning about like, yo, this Yaqui ancestor and elder.
And that put him on the path. It's so, in 8 months, man, this is what's amazing to me. That put him on the path to injecting culture into rock and roll. He was investigating world music long before the Beatles ever did. You know, and I think had he lived, this was going to be, you know, his journey.
English and Spanish.
Yeah, exactly. And creating a pathway for greater understanding through the music.
What was the conversation, that scene with Tata? What was that conversation, or did you have a conversation with Luis Valdez about what the scene was saying beyond the dialogue?
100%, because and I've said this before too. You know, especially hanging out with Luis a lot more these days. He wasn't just making a movie. He was putting things in between the lines. You know, a little insidious there, man. You know, giving that little message. You know, life is a snake. You know, crawling out of its own dead skin, and it was about a greater, you know, sense of self and a greater sense of your place in the universe, you know, and what you can do with that. And it's very self-empowering. Right. And like you said, you only do that by being connected to the source.
Exactly.
Where does your power come from? You know, and a lot of my films, we'll talk about Gangland here in a little bit. A lot of my films deal with that. It's like, where does your power come from? Does it come from, you know, your family, from your community, from your place, from your culture, all of that, and you know, this was Ritchie's, you know, epiphany, you know, through Bob, but you know, in the scene, you know, with the shaman, that you know was going to imprint on him and affect his journey moving forward.
Speaking about powerful, I always think about the powerful bond between Bob and Ritchie. Because that was like, you know, again, older brother, little brother, but little brother is kind of like, dude, I'm taking care of business, bro. Like, I know, like, you got all this dysfunction, but I'm trying to make it and get my career going. The question I have is, there's a moment after Bob finally tells Ritchie, you're my little brother. It's really incredibly emotional because it almost feels like years of pain disappear for just a second. Did that scene in particular affect you emotionally while filming it?
Although, every single one, man. It was the emotions were right there the entire time. It was never difficult to summon these things up. Because first of all, the script was so well written, you know, and then ultimately the movie was so well cast. You know, I mean, you know, God rest her, Elizabeth Pena. What a force of nature she was. You know,
she's amazing.
And then Rosanna De Soto, that I worked with twice. You know, in a row. You know, I mean, just it was just opening your heart and opening up, you know, yourself and subjugating your ego to the story itself. You know, so. You know, and Esai and I still see each other all the time. You know, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, what's funny is that I'm actually older than Esai, and I'm taller than he is. So, you know, a lot of times I was the one standing on the floor below while he got to stand on the curb. You know, but Yeah,
Movie magic.
it's movie magic, man.
Yeah.
But he's got that presence.
yeah,
He's got that presence
sure.
where he's just, he just felt, more intimidating than Ritchie did.
Shout out to Esai Morales,
Yeah.
man.
Always.
One more question for La Bamba.
Yeah.
The airplane scene
Yeah.
at the beginning.
Yeah.
It's a montage of these kids playing basketball.
Mm-hmm.
These planes collide. What was that about? I never really understood that part.
It's for real. That is an actual historical event. There was a midair collision over. I think it was Pacoima Junior High.
Mm-hmm.
And Ritchie had gone to an uncle's funeral that day, and so he was not at school. The kid who unfortunately dies, that's actually Luis Valdez's son, one of his sons.
Yeah, the actor. He's acting. Okay.
Yeah. But that actually happened, and that so traumatized Ritchie, even though he wasn't there, that's what led him to have these nightmares. And this is for real. This isn't Hollywood, telling a story. It came directly from the family. Ritchie had a deep fear of flying.
And that's where it stemmed from, that midair crash.
It stemmed from that midair collision when he was probably 12, 13 years old, would have been in 7th or 8th grade, because his best friend did get killed. And so he had this fatalistic view of that ever since. And it's so bizarre because it's like, Luis is one of these guys, who, I remember we were premiering it in London, and I said something along the lines of, well, maybe now that I'm famous, maybe I'll get shot in the street like John Lennon.
Oh, shit.
Luis smacked me.
Yeah.
He said,
don't fuck around like that,
don't
dude.
tempt the gods.
Yeah.
Don't tempt the gods.
Yep.
And once again, that's something that is, between the lines of La Bamba, is that, this sort of fatalistic, connection we have with the universe. What is it that we are, manifesting? What are we actualizing? And Ritchie actualized and manifested his own success. Yeah. But in some ways, did he manifest, his demise?
For you, what was your favorite scene of the movie, and why? Because I think we all have our fan favorites, but you, as being the character in the film, what was your favorite scene, and why was that your favorite?
That's interesting, man. So many of them made such an impression. Obviously, the concert scenes, were amazing. Yeah. I mean, to stand up there with all those extras and to feel like a rock star. But at the same time, Kurt Sobel was watching, my lip sync with Danny, and Jim Fox was watching my finger sync, and Luis and Taylor were watching performance. I mean, they would line up after every, take and performance, and tell me everything I did wrong. And I was like, did I do anything right? Right. I mean, I was getting beat up between takes every single time. You missed this, dude. You missed that, dude. And I was like, wow. So I can't say that I truly enjoyed the concert sequence. Although a favorite memory is like Brian Setzer after the first master takes. He went, dude, that was a blazing solo. I said, yeah, I'll tell Cesar Rosas you said so.
Yep.
Because we're a low budget film, man. $6 million to make this movie. And it was a negative pickup through Columbia.
That's crazy.
They didn't put any money in it. They were just going to pick up the distribution and the advertising. Bill Borden, the producer, stuck his head in the door in that sequence, and he literally says, "We have an hour to get this, or it's not in the movie," because they were going to pull the plug because they didn't want to pay overtime. So there were God knows how many versions of that. Well, hey, ho, ha, he, all of that, right? And we were doing 3 and 4 versions at a pop. And so they had to put up cue cards for me to say, okay, here's number 1, here's number 2, here's number 3, point out to which one I was there to get the lip sync. And some of those takes of me, like,
of course,
those are real.
Yeah.
That wasn't acting. Those were so real because there was so much pressure on, I have to say there was, I mean, when I think of we started off in Watsonville with the apricot picking stuff, right? And the very first morning, getting picked up by the van at like 6:30, in the motel parking lot. This isn't fancy stuff, man. We're in farm country. It's a motel, bro. So the van is pick up at 6:30. At 6 o'clock, there's a pounding on my door, and it's Connie, Richie's mom, and she's going, "Richie, time to go to work, Richie." And so from that moment on, man, I am in it.
Ritchie,
I am in it, and every one of those scenes, and every they all resonated, man, because the family was there, and so I can't point to one and go, oh, I had the best time doing this one. The whole thing was this experience that you know, I mean, was just made an indelible mark on me, you know. I was literally, you know, I was doing, you know, press for Gangland and calling into radio stations around the country, and I called into one in San Francisco, and the DJ said, did you ever meet the real Donna Fox? I said, yeah, I met her briefly. She was a lovely lady. She was fantastic. I think she's a real estate, you know, a realtor in your area now. He goes, well, I just happen to have her on the phone, and you know,
Donna's on the phone.
And Don was on the phone, man, and she was so sweet and
cool.
said, you know, how we really did a great job of representing Ritchie in that time and everything else, and she was very kind. She was very kind.
Did you ever ask her how long that impacted her for? Because obviously that's got to be
Well,
traumatic.
she moved.
At 17 years old, right?
She moved.
She's out of
man.
here.
But you know, it's like she was a baby when her man died, so to speak.
No,
it's tragically.
Huge. You know, I mean, it impacted the family too. You know, I mean, one of my favorite, you know, scenes, and I've told this story before. You know, was getting on the plane. You know, and Burbank Airport. Okay, fake snow, built the snow drifts, blowing plastic snow through big fans and everything. You know, it's ridiculous. And Taylor and Luis had specifically asked the family not to come that night because they just knew. And so you know, they're putting the cold makeup on. Ritchie had a fever and a flu and whatnot, and so I'm literally on the tarmac on the runway, you know, by the period plane. And they're touching up the makeup, and all of a sudden I see Connie, and she was 12 at the time.
Yeah.
So she had vivid memories of Ritchie. She had a bond. Irma was a little younger. Mario was a baby, so no memories whatsoever. So she comes up, and I immediately know something's wrong because she says, "Lou, can I say something to you?" And she'd been calling me Ritchie for a couple of months at this point. And I thought, oh shit, I've done something wrong. I've offended the family. I didn't know what was going on. And I said, of course, Connie. And I stood up from the makeup chair, and the second I stand up, she collapses in my arms, and she says, "Why did you go? Why did you have to go? Why did you?" And she just vents, and it was a cathartic moment where she let out 30 years of pain, you know. And then Taylor comes over and he takes her by the shoulders. Says, "Connie, we said we weren't going to do this." You know, and he leads her away, but it was just like, wow.
So
you know,
sad.
just again, just a reminder that we weren't just making a movie.
One of the things that was even more tragic is not only losing Ritchie Valens, but also the Big Bopper, Buddy Holly, and who else?
The pilot. There were 4 people.
The pilot, yeah. So 3 legends in rock and roll that died too soon.
And then the headline in the New York Times was "The Day the Music Died."
Yeah.
That's where that line comes from.
It was super sad to lose all those great musicians, those human beings, families, you know. One more question about that, because that scene, Ritchie takes off, passes away, then the next day, I believe it's Dick Clark or Casey Kasem or Dick Clark.
It was
or Richard, Rick Dees.
Yeah, it was Rick Dees playing the role.
Playing the role and saying that Ritchie Valens, 17, had passed away. Bob,
he's under the car.
He's under the car. He's like, what the fuck? Like, right? He gets up, goes to the bridge, and that iconic scene.
Yeah.
Was that improvised or was that written in the script?
No, that's written. Now, here's something really cool. We talked about the day the music died, right? The song, American Pie, right? Yeah. He's literally at the end, the 3 men I admired most, Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost. Yeah. They caught the last train for the coast the day the music died. Right. He's talking about Buddy, Ritchie, and the Big Bopper in that song. Now, I say that to say this. He goes, Luis Valdez wrote that scene very, very specifically. And here's the Easter egg there. Bob goes to that bridge, right? Over that arroyo. Drove my Chevy to the levee, but the levee was dry. That's why he picked that location, a dry riverbed for that moment. Over the bridge where he goes, Ritchie! Yeah. There was nothing happenstance about Luis's vision for this movie, and that's why he chose, that's why he chose that location.
Bob, he lets it out, and we all felt it watching it on the big screen.
It's primal.
Yeah. Wow. What a beautiful, beautiful movie.
Thank you, brother.
Garfield High School, man.
Yeah.
Garfield High School. All right. We've had a great conversation about one of my favorite movies, La Bamba, with my brother Lou, the iconic, great, inspirational figure. Love you, brother.
Thank you, man. Back at you.
Thank you, man. There it is. Stay tuned for part 2. That's right, y'all. It's Taboo Nawasha, and I hope you enjoyed geeking out with me and going straight into geek mode. For more information, for more videos, subscribe, like, and comment. Share it with your friends. Much love. There it is.